Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive.
Hmm.
Today we're going to be looking at the state of our world. It's a really comprehensive handbook that basically gives our planet a head-to-toe checkup.
Mm.
And we're going to be focusing specifically on the conclusion of this report. We're going to be talking about the key findings, the absolute need for everybody to work together, and also what a future could look like that's sustainable and equitable.
Yeah, and this report goes beyond just like data points and statistics.
Right.
It really tries to connect the dots between human systems and the Earth's systems.
Okay.
So we're talking about seeing patterns and feedback loops and potential tipping points, things that could really change our world in a significant way.
Yeah, I have to say, going through this report, it really felt like a crash course in everything: economics, politics, technology, even culture.
Right.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
But one thing that really jumped out at me from the key findings was just how intertwined all of the big challenges that we're facing today really are. Climate change, biodiversity loss, and social inequality, they're all connected.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tangled knot, isn't it? If you pull
Yeah.
on one strand, the whole thing kind of moves.
Yeah. It's like that saying, treat the cause, not the symptom, but on a global scale.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin with something that's this complex?
Well, that's where this idea of integrated action comes in.
Okay.
The report really emphasizes that we can't address these things in isolation.
Right.
For example, deforestation in the Amazon rainforest.
Yeah.
It not only contributes to climate change, but it also disrupts biodiversity and the livelihoods of indigenous communities. So what happens in one part of the world very much affects us all.
It's a chain reaction.
Yeah, exactly.
So what does this integrated action actually look like?
Well, the report argues that sometimes solutions in one area can have positive ripple effects in other areas.
Okay.
One example they talk about is investing in renewable energy.
Okay.
So not only can this help reduce carbon emissions, it can also create jobs, improve public health by reducing air pollution, and even increase energy access in developing countries.
So it's not just about doing good things. It's about doing things that will have a chain reaction of positive outcomes.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay. Now, the report doesn't sugarcoat the risks that we're facing, though, either.
No.
What are some of the red flags that it brings up?
Well, the report dives deep into climate change.
Uh-huh.
And the picture that it paints is pretty stark.
Yeah.
We're talking about more frequent and intense heat waves, droughts, floods, rising sea levels. And all of this has consequences for people and ecosystems.
Yeah.
And the longer we wait to take action, the worse those impacts will be.
It doesn't sound good. The report also doesn't shy away from biodiversity loss either, right?
Absolutely not. It highlights that we're losing species at an unprecedented rate. And, this isn't just about losing beautiful creatures. It has implications for the entire web of life,
Right.
including us humans. Think about the collapse of insect populations.
Okay.
That's a potential tipping point that could disrupt ecosystems and threaten food security.
Yeah. It's like pulling threads out of a tapestry. Eventually, the whole thing's going to unravel.
Yeah.
And it's not just about, cute animals going extinct. It's about the vital roles that these species play in maintaining the planet,
Right.
the health of our planet.
Absolutely.
So the report also points out that these environmental challenges,
Yeah.
they're deeply intertwined with social and economic inequality.
Yeah.
And it's often those who have contributed the least to these problems who are the most vulnerable to their effects,
Absolutely.
like with rising sea levels.
Yeah.
It's coastal communities in developing nations that are already facing displacement and loss of livelihoods.
Right. It's a double whammy.
Yeah.
Those who can least afford it are often hit the hardest.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges.
Yeah.
But what about solutions?
Right.
This report does offer a vision for a sustainable and equitable future. What are some of the key elements of that vision?
Well, one of the core elements is a transition to a low-carbon economy.
All right.
This means phasing out fossil fuels, investing in renewable energy,
Yeah.
and improving energy efficiency across the board.
Yeah.
But it's not just about technology.
Right.
It's also about a fundamental shift in our mindsets.
So it's not just about driving electric cars.
Right.
It's about questioning whether we need to drive as much in the first place.
Yeah,
Rethinking our consumption patterns, how we produce and dispose of goods.
exactly. The report talks about a circular economy
Right.
where resources are kept in use for as long as possible,
Okay.
reducing waste and minimizing our footprint.
It's like a giant recycling program for the entire global economy.
Yeah, something like that.
That sounds incredibly ambitious.
It is.
What else does the report highlight in terms of creating this more sustainable future?
Well, they really emphasize the power of education.
Right.
They argue that we need to empower individuals with knowledge, skills, and values to support sustainable living.
I like that because sometimes it's easy to feel overwhelmed and kind of powerless
Yeah,
when we think about these huge global problems.
right.
But this reminds us that change starts with each of us and the choices that we make every day.
Yeah. And the choices that we make collectively as well.
Okay.
The report talks about the need for strong governance and international cooperation
Okay.
to create the right policy frameworks and incentives for a sustainable future.
So it's not just about individuals doing their part. It's about creating systems that support sustainable choices.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this report is calling for a multi-pronged approach. Individual action,
Yeah.
collective action,
Yeah.
systemic change.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because the report doesn't actually try to prescribe a one-size-fits-all solution. It acknowledges that different cultures and communities will have different pathways to sustainability.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
There isn't one single solution that will work for everyone everywhere.
Right.
So what does this mean for you, the listener? It means recognizing that you are not just a bystander in this whole thing.
Yeah.
You're a participant.
Absolutely.
Every action and every choice that you make
Right.
has ripple effects.
It does. And what I find really fascinating is that the report doesn't just focus on the doom and gloom.
Okay.
It highlights all these inspiring examples of individuals and communities around the world who were already taking action. You know, from indigenous communities protecting their ancestral lands to young activists leading the fight for climate justice.
Yeah,
It's a reminder that there's hope and that positive change is happening.
that's a great point. You know, we have so much to learn
Yeah.
from those who have been stewards of the land for generations.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about traditional knowledge either.
Right.
It's about integrating that knowledge with modern science and technology to create these really innovative solutions.
Yeah, that's where things get interesting.
Yeah. Speaking of collaboration,
Yeah.
let's not forget about the role of technology.
Absolutely.
The report spotlights some incredible innovations, from renewable energy to sustainable agriculture to circular economy solutions, and they're all making a difference.
They are, and it's fascinating to see how these technological advancements are converging with social and cultural shifts, creating this almost perfect storm for positive change.
I like that.
Yeah.
A perfect storm for good.
Yeah.
It's like all the pieces are falling into place, but it's up to us to put them together
Right.
and create the picture that we want to see.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what does that picture look like according to the report?
Well, they envision a world where everyone has access to clean energy, healthy food, clean water,
Okay.
a safe and stable environment. It's a world where we value diversity, equity, inclusion,
Yeah.
and where we respect the limits of our planet.
A world where we work together
Yeah.
to create a future that thrives for all.
Yeah, that's a vision worth striving for.
Absolutely. And the good news is we don't have to wait for someone else to make it happen. We can start building that future today, right here, right now. But before we dive into what that looked like, let's take a moment to process everything that we've discussed so far.
Yeah, good idea. You know, one thing that really jumped out at me from this report is that it doesn't just focus on the problems.
Yeah.
It also looks at solutions and innovations in different fields.
Yeah. It's like they're saying, okay, we have this huge mess to clean up, but here are some tools and strategies we can use. And speaking of tools, this report seems particularly optimistic about the potential of technology.
Yeah, it really does. It highlights these incredible advancements in renewable energy technologies, like solar and wind power, for example.
It is amazing how those technologies have become so much more affordable and efficient. I remember when solar panels felt like such a novelty.
Right.
Like you'd only see them on a few eco-conscious houses,
Yeah.
and now they're popping up everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just individuals adopting solar power anymore. It's about entire countries transitioning to renewables.
Okay.
The report even cited a study showing that by 2050, solar and wind energy could meet something like 80% of global electricity demand.
Wow. That's a pretty significant shift. It sounds like we're finally starting to break free from fossil fuels.
Yeah, the transition is definitely happening. But the report emphasizes that we need to accelerate these efforts.
Okay.
And it's not just about adding more renewable energy sources.
Right.
It's about phasing out fossil fuel infrastructure
Okay.
and investing in things like energy storage solutions.
Which is obviously a lot easier said than done. There are a lot of powerful interests who want to maintain the status quo.
Oh, absolutely. And the report acknowledges that, political will is crucial here.
Yeah.
We need governments to create the right incentives and regulations and policies to actually shift us towards that more sustainable energy future.
Right. So it's not just about technological innovation.
Right.
It's also about making bold policy decisions.
Yeah.
And standing up to those who are benefiting from the old ways of doing things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But obviously, changing systems and infrastructure takes time.
It does.
So what can we do right now in the meantime?
Well, the report talks about the importance of individual actions,
Okay.
like adopting energy-efficient appliances or reducing energy use at home.
Okay.
But it also emphasizes the need for broader cultural shifts and behavioral change.
Okay.
And it talks about using tools like environmental education, public awareness campaigns, and what they call behavioral nudges to encourage people to make more sustainable choices.
Behavioral nudges. That sounds intriguing.
Yeah, they're basically subtle ways of influencing people's choices without restricting their freedom.
Okay.
For example, the report talks about how something as simple as placing recycling bins next to trash cans
Okay.
can dramatically increase recycling rates,
Oh, interesting.
or how using default settings on appliances to be more energy saving can also make a big difference.
So it's about making sustainability the easy choice,
Yeah,
the default option,
exactly.
rather than something that people have to go out of their way to do.
Right.
I like that.
The key takeaway here is that even small changes in individual behavior,
Yeah.
when you multiply that across millions of people, can actually have a big impact.
So it's not about feeling overwhelmed by the size of the problem.
Right.
It's about focusing on what we can control,
Yeah.
the choices we make every day.
Absolutely.
But I think sometimes it's easy to feel like our individual actions are just a drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
Does the report address that feeling?
It does. It says that while individual actions are important,
Yeah.
they also need to be supported by systemic change.
Okay.
We need governments and businesses and institutions all working together to create a system that makes those sustainable choices easier and more accessible for everybody.
Right. So it's about creating an environment where sustainability is the norm,
Yeah,
not the exception.
exactly. And it's about shifting our values as a society, and recognizing that our well-being is tied to the well-being of the planet.
This all brings us back to that vision of a sustainable and equitable future.
It does.
What would a world that prioritizes both people and the planet look like?
Well, the report paints a picture of a world where everyone has access to clean energy, healthy food, clean water,
Okay.
a safe and stable environment where we value diversity
Yeah.
and understand that social justice and environmental sustainability are inseparable.
That's a really powerful vision.
Yeah.
But is it actually achievable? I mean, we are facing some pretty big challenges.
Yeah, the report acknowledges that.
Yeah.
But it also emphasizes that we have the knowledge and the resources and the technology to create this future. It's not some utopian fantasy.
Right.
It's a very real possibility if we choose to make it happen.
So it's a choice.
It is.
And it sounds like a pretty critical one.
Yeah, it is. The report makes it very clear that the window of opportunity for taking action is closing. The longer we wait to address these challenges, the harder and more expensive it will be to fix them.
So what does this mean for our listeners?
Right.
What can they do to help create this future? Not just for themselves, but for everyone. So we've talked about a lot, from the interconnected challenges in the report to this really inspiring vision of a sustainable and equitable future.
Yeah.
But let's get practical. What can we actually do to make that vision a reality?
Well, the report gives us a whole toolkit of strategies and approaches.
Right.
And it emphasizes that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
It's really about finding what works best for each person or community or country.
Okay. So it's about finding solutions that fit our own unique circumstances and contexts.
Exactly.
But we'll start with the personal level. What are some changes that we can make in our own lives that can actually make a difference when it comes to sustainability?
Well, as you've probably heard before, reducing our carbon footprint is essential.
Okay.
And the report suggests some simple things like, driving less,
Right.
choosing public transportation or cycling when possible,
Yeah.
and opting for more fuel-efficient vehicles if you do need a car.
And for those who can afford it, switching to electric vehicles or hybrids can make a really big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the report also mentioned that some countries are even offering incentives to make electric vehicles more accessible.
Yeah, they are.
And they could save you money on gas in the long run, too.
Exactly. And let's not forget about energy efficiency at home.
Right.
Simple things like switching to LED light bulbs,
Okay.
using energy-efficient appliances,
Yeah.
properly insulating your home.
Right.
These can all significantly reduce your energy consumption.
You know, I've been thinking about getting one of those smart thermostats
Yeah.
that learns your habits and adjusts the temperature accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
I read that they can actually save quite a bit of energy.
They can.
Yeah.
And you know, speaking of consumption, the report also talks about rethinking our relationship with stuff in general.
Okay.
We live in this culture of overconsumption,
Right.
and that obviously has a huge environmental impact.
So it's not just about buying eco-friendly products.
Right.
It's about buying less overall.
Yeah, exactly.
Like questioning whether we really need something before we buy it.
Yeah. It's about repairing and reusing items instead of automatically replacing them.
Okay.
You know, the report highlights things like repair cafes and community workshops
Oh, cool.
where people can learn to fix their own belongings.
I love that. It's about embracing a more mindful approach to consumption,
Absolutely.
focusing on quality over quantity,
Yeah.
and really appreciating what we already have.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that true wealth isn't about how much stuff you own.
Right.
It's about the quality of your relationships, your experiences, your connection to nature.
Well said. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the community level.
Okay.
What actions can we take together to create more sustainable communities?
Well, the report really emphasizes the power of collective action.
Okay.
You know, supporting things like community gardens, farmers markets, local businesses that prioritize sustainability. These can all help create a more resilient local economy.
Yeah, I love that. It's about, fostering that sense of community,
Uh-huh.
connecting with our neighbors,
Yeah.
knowing where our food comes from.
Exactly. And it's also about advocating for policy changes at the local level.
Okay.
The report talks about communities that have successfully pushed for better public transportation bike lanes, more green spaces.
So, we can make our voices heard at city council meetings.
Yeah.
Write to our representatives.
Right.
Support organizations that are working to create these more sustainable communities.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of education and awareness raising either.
Yeah.
The report talks about things like workshops, film screenings, community dialogues, all these ways to share information and inspire action.
Right. It's about empowering ourselves and each other to really be the change that we want to see in the world.
That's it.
Now let's zoom out to the global level for a minute. What can we do as individuals to address these really big systemic challenges that the report highlights?
Well, one thing is to stay informed about what's going on in the world
Right.
and to really understand how these issues are all connected.
Yeah.
The report urges us to be critical thinkers
Okay.
and to seek out reliable information, especially in this age of, social media and information overload.
So do your research.
Yeah,
Be aware of biases.
right.
Make sure you're not just stuck in an echo chamber.
Exactly. And the report also encourages us to support organizations that are working to address these challenges.
Yeah.
Donate to them, volunteer, spread the word about the work they're doing.
Right. Use our voices to amplify their message and hold our leaders accountable
Absolutely.
for taking action on climate change, biodiversity loss, and social justice.
That's right. The report stresses that even though these challenges can feel overwhelming,
Yeah.
we can't afford to lose hope.
Right.
We have the knowledge and the resources and the technology to create a better future.
So it's about choosing to believe that a better world is possible
Yeah.
and then acting on that belief.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our actions, no matter how small,
Yeah.
are all part of a larger collective effort.
Right.
And together, we can create a world where both humanity and nature can thrive.
That's a really powerful message to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the state of our world. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. There are millions of people all around the world working toward a more sustainable and equitable future. Let's connect with each other, share ideas, support each other's efforts, and keep moving forward together.